Hello and welcome to the Labyrinth of Limitations. This is a little labyrinth focusing on counterpoint in an old style, like a Baroque style, on the guitar. And I've seen different people have different takes on this, on how to do this on guitar, and I kind of take exception with a lot of them because they focus too much on chords, in my opinion, and trying to just make that sound kind of Bach-like. And we need to be getting free from chords, and I'm going to have more videos about that. We use chords in order to get free from them, to make polyphony, to make independent voices. And this can help your playing in all styles, any modern style. It's definitely helped mine. And so I'm going to take as my inspiration a sonata from the Baroque era by Domenico Scarlatti. And it starts like this. I can play the beginning, then I'll have to only a few bars because it uses a drop D string and I don't want to tune down. So it goes like this. And then I have to tune down, so I have to stop there. But this is using D minor 6 diminished and A dominant 7th diminished and G minor 6 diminished. This is in the key of D minor. And the composer may not have thought of it that way, but we can, and we can approximate. So if I wanted to get free from it, this is the idea. I hope it comes across. I'm not saying it's like, you know, better. It's just getting into the stylistic space, right? Now, obviously, the Scarlatti sonata is a masterpiece, but so I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to show you the kind of ways that I'm approaching this. And this is using the scales of chords. It's using dyads, which sound better, which are more to the point. We use dyads, but then we start thinking melodically with those dyads. I'm going to try to share exercises and things for how to do that. So for starters, I'm thinking when doing this for the exercise of it and music making, it's pretty, I'm thinking one measure of D minor 6 diminished, the scale, and one measure of A dominant 7th diminished. At first, I'm going to think other things later, which I probably won't have time to talk about in this video, but maybe I'll do a follow-up talking about modulating and different things. But for starters, we're just going to stay with that because there's a lot to do. So D minor 6, the trick is like this. So here's the harmonic background I'll do in drop 2. So it's D minor 6, on, off, on. No, now I'm on the on chord for D minor 6, and then I'll go to A7. That's D minor 6. Now I went to D minor 6. A7. And then there's lots of things to do, but that's the harmonic rhythm. And what I'm doing very importantly, as a default, though not always, there's ways to work around this, but as a default for the archetype, like the background idea, I am playing the on chord at the ending of the D minor 6 diminished scale as I go into A7. Then I'm playing the on chord of A7 going into D minor 6. The reason why, some of you know, we've talked about it, D minor 6 is almost the diminished that goes to A7. So that's the diminished within the A7 scale. And then A7 is almost the diminished that goes to D minor 6. Right, so doing in this style. Okay, so then the next thing is we need to practice our elevator of intervals. Now, in the elevator PDF, I share with you the elevator of intervals. That's an important part, talked about in there, so you can get that PDF. You can do the elevator sequence in the app and just play the outer notes. Whenever it's doing a triad, you could just put this note, you have to move it. You can play it like this. Sometimes I do. I go, like that, but I might also go. So, I need to be able to play fifths. But another source for your information when you want documents, when you want to see charts, is the way this Little Labyrinth series began. If you go to the first episodes of the Little Labyrinth with the blue logo, you will find a series on the dyads, the elevator of intervals, talking about how to move between them too. So it's like got thirds and then moving thirds to fifths, which is this, and moving fifths to sixths, and so on and so forth. And then out to octaves, and then to thirds separated by an octave, and then fifths separated by an octave. Whoops, I didn't do that right, did I? Not crazy about that today. There you go. And then so on and so forth. That's the elevator of intervals, which is what we're using. But this is going to give us some structure and focus to think of this progression and think of this Baroque style. I think it really helps. And then you can kind of make it more modern in your normal playing. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to go thirds for starters. So I'm just doing a little, you could do anything, but I'm doing D minor 6, third to the off. This is diminished. I always know when I'm on the diminished notes or not. And I know which notes. This is a third and a fifth. I have to think these things. This is the second and the fourth. This is the root and the third in order to do this kind of thing. And I should be thinking that anyway, so that I can do borrowings and stuff, right? I want to be able to borrow. I need to know what the notes are. So anyway, I'm doing thirds. And I'm going to go to A dominant 7th. And I'm ending up on A dominant 7th. So I could go like, these are all patterns. So I could work out different ways of making beautiful melodic motion that's kind of mostly stepwise while ending on the on chord. So I could go, and then that's A7. Listen to that. That's that interval that's the most modern sounding, or one of the most modern sounding in the minor 6 scale, because it's a major second. And I'll do that like I did. And then, so that was just practicing the exercise. But if I were actually freely improvising, I would do something like, so I would, if I ended up, I probably wouldn't do that jump. That's a pretty dramatic gesture. But if I ended up there, like, I would work out of it by doing some contrary motion, which then makes it sound like, which is beautiful. So see, that's why, looking at the intervals, we start to see these things and find ways of sounding more traditional when we want to, okay? So that's a thing to do. And then you can do a little bit of contrary motion. Maybe I'll just go third to fifth and then third, 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 like this. Whoops. And then same thing here. So, sounds a little more modern there, but it's fine. And then I'm gonna go, and then, so that kind of thing. And then maybe thirds to fifths to octaves, maybe. So thirds to fifths to sixths, I mean. And stay on 6, or that's pretty. And then third to fifth to sixth to fifth to third, and then see, I did that. it makes beautiful. So you go, and so. That would be that. So. Which is pretty stuff. What I do there is 6 octave, 10th. And then you can add to your practice, you know, seeing a drop 2. So you go, but see how I used it to make dyads. What I did there, instead of going, I went. So that's that subset superset method I'm using there. I went 6 in A dominant 7th diminished. There's a 5th and a 3rd. I went out to an octave to a 10th, but I know that my 10th is going to be that's surrounding a drop 2, but I'm going, and then this is a shell chord. So I can go, I did a shell. So I could go, so what did I do? These are 6th in D minor 6, and I'm seeing a shell chord, and I'm just grabbing this note. So I go, or I could do the high shell, which is pretty. So, right, and then I go, so, pretty, or. Sense to you at all. None of what I've done in this episode will make sense at all to you if you don't know a minor 6th scale and if you don't know a dominant 7th scale. And then but if you know those two things and you know how to transpose them so that one's in D minor 6 and one's A7, then you can go D minor 6 and then A7. Whoops. And then if you know your elevator, then you can do things like seeing the shell chords and all that stuff. You can do the elevator if you're studying that, or even just a little part of that. And if you know the elevator of intervals, at least the concept of it, then you can start practicing that by practicing thirds or tenths. Right? That's just, I was going da 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 da, D minor, A7, da 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 da, and then D minor, da 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 da. I guess I was doing that in 3/4 at that time. I've been practicing both, so I might have slipped to 3/4 a couple times in this episode. My apologies if so, but I practiced 3/4. That would be 3/4 is like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2. So that's 3/4. And 4/4 would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 pretty stuff. G, and so on. So we want to practice that, and There's other things I'll talk about on how to practice it. But for starters, I think just taking some intervals and moving them in this way. I guess this episode went a little longer than I expected, but if anybody's hanging out still, yeah, practicing doing a little melodic figure. So like going and going. That was 2 notes, and I'm just going on, off, on, off, on, off, on, and going on, off. I'm just matching it, you see? And then maybe, so that's just, and then you can on that one, but if I started on a different note, so down, you know, there's and all I'm doing is just descending down, you know, so these type of exercises I'll talk to you about more, but these are ways of seeing just the scale in and of itself and learning to recognize it around the neck. The chords are important. I'm not saying they're not. But I'm saying that it's really freeing the more and more you look at just dyads. I think it's super important. And then see the relationship to the chords and learn to think beyond chords. So I guess have fun doing that. Practicing thinking beyond chords. More to come. Thank you for following, and keep on practicing.